Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back once again to the Operational Intelligence Market Overview here at InsideAnalysis.com. My name is Eric Cavanaugh with the Vlor Group. I will be your host for our next conversation, and this looks to be very interesting already. We're just beginning, and it already looks good. The company is Boundary, and the product is Boundary, and we're going to be hearing from Dustin Lawler and perhaps from Chris O'Connell as well. So with that, Dustin, I'm going to turn it over to you to show us what you got.
Excellent. Sounds great. Thank you. So what I'm going to be walking through here is Boundary. With Boundary, a couple of key things to really start off with is keep in mind it's an agent-driven solution, so it's all software-based. The software agent lives on each of the servers that you'd be planning to monitor. So from there, you'd first deploy the software agents. Now, the software agents, obviously lightweight, they're small, they're written in C. Those agents can be installed on pretty much any Linux distribution, a number of Windows platforms, and there's Unix, of course. From there, the moment that you install the software agent, it immediately begins to look at all of the packet header traffic. So it examines every packet header that goes through the NIC, so anything coming inbound or anything going out of the NIC. From there, it takes that, it assembles that into a flow table, and then it streams it off to the Boundary SaaS service. So that right there is the other key part, is the fact that everything that's happening within Boundary, it's all coming back to our SaaS platform. So that means that really the only thing that you need to have or install or maintain at your server side would be these software agents. One of the huge strengths also of going with the software agent is the portability of it. So these agents can be installed anywhere from your physical servers to your virtual instances to your infrastructure as a service servers that happen to live out in the cloud. They can also exist in all of those. So what that means is, if you have a hybrid environment, you can simply take the software agent, get it dropped in, and then you're off and running. Now, once the information comes into Boundary, we're taking the information, we're processing it at real time, and we're assembling it into a couple of views that you can see here on screen. So a couple of key use cases here, which I can basically call out from these views, the first of which would be application monitoring. So application monitoring is a very typical use case that our customers tend to deal with in terms of leveraging Boundary. The other common use case is using the Boundary flow data that's coming inbound as more or less of a NetFlow or SFlow type replacement tool. In the past, it was fairly common for someone to leverage an appliance to get to this kind of information, but again, with more and more people using virtualization or using the cloud, it's no longer really feasible or even possible to install an appliance into environments like that because they're obviously just not owned. There's no option there. So going the approach of using the software agent is it's really the only method that people could use today. Now, to come back to the AppViz view, with AppViz, so it's really important for me to emphasize what I mean by application monitoring. So I don't mean it in the traditional sense of application monitoring through bytecode instrumentation. So I'm not talking about installing a software agent and then having to set up some types of hooks or set up some kind of instrumentation into your code in order to get to this level of monitoring. Instead, you literally install the software agent, you do zero configuration. All that's happening is it's looking at what's happening from outside of the applications by using the network traffic. So the easiest thing that you could probably associate or think about when talking about or when working with Boundary are those tools like a Wireshark or T-Speedup or other tools that people would commonly use to get to try to figure out what's happening with their applications from the perspective of the network. Now, those tools that I just listed off, those tools work well, but the caveat to them is that they're really just good point solutions, right? So you'd commonly pull up a Wireshark or you commonly fire off T-Speedup if you're trying to troubleshoot something at that point in time. Also, you'd really only use those tools to get a sample of what's happening with the subset of your nodes. So one of the killer features of Boundary is that it's always on, it's looking at what's happening every second, and it's looking across the entirety of your infrastructure. So So again, that's what I mean when I'm talking about application monitoring. So it's application monitoring that's derived from network information. The other, one of the other key things to note when talking about application monitoring with Boundary is, I'm not really talking about monitoring, an environment that looks like this. I'm not talking about, maybe a basic LAMP stack or a basic, three-tiered architecture setup. Instead, a lot of the people that we talk to and a lot of people that really find value in Boundary are people that have these very complex, very large distributed systems. So systems that, really look more like this than they do of the other view that I referenced before. All right, so real fast, just to take a quick step back, this view that we're looking at right now, this is actually Boundary monitoring Boundary. So this view that, this view that I have up on screen, this is actually showing me all of the critical services, all the critical application tiers that come together to deliver our service to our customers. Now, going into making up this view are actually 119 servers. Now, with servers, I talked earlier about using that software agent that's out there. We're really using these servers as a delivery method to get to the application data we care about. So servers are more or less a necessary evil, right? I mean, it's something that, people need them. People need to have this to deliver their applications or deliver their services. But really, when someone's talking about what they care about, it's usually not server A or server B or server C. It's really, okay, well, is my messaging tier currently functioning? Is my data store, is this currently up, and is this behaving, and so on. So this is essentially, or fundamentally, this is what people really care about. The other point here is if I select any of these circles or any of these tiers that you see here, you can see really what this is representing is either an application tier or a cluster of servers that I care about right now. So in the case of any of these here, what's actually going into making these up are a number of servers that sit behind here that then bubble up to form these groups or to form these tiers. Now, what we're looking at is the default view that Boundary presents based off of the information that we've gathered that's tied to these critical servers and then critical applications that sit on top of it. In this default view, each of these lines that you see that's being drawn from tier to tier, this is all happening from the perspective of the servers. So again, topology, this is nothing new, right? People have been doing application topology or server topology, I should say, for years, but generally the method or approach that they would take was relying on, okay, well, what's happening with my router, my switch, and really it was layer 2, layer 3 mapping. So with Boundary, we're taking the approach of, okay, we have no idea what's happening with the underlying infrastructure. We have no idea what's happening with the switches or what have you. Instead, we only know about what's happening with the servers. So from there, from the server's perspective, it's telling you who's communicating with whom. We're able to get to this view based off of the flow data that we're collecting. So we're able to go in and say, show me source, show me destination. Let's look at the port protocol pairs. We then put that together in a map, and we're automatically generating this type of view based off of that data. The other key thing about this view is it's dynamic, and it's constantly running. So every 5 seconds, we're going in, and we're doing a refresh of service discovery, and we're figuring out exactly, are these connections expired? Are these connections starting to fade over time? Which is what we can see is happening right now, actually, with this particular component. That actually brings up another good point, which are, the colors and the actual the weights that we see associated to each of these application tiers. So real fast, let me do this. Let me just clean up my view. And I'll say I only care about my messaging tier, my collector tier, and my streaming tier. There we go. So it's easier to digest. And now I can take this view, and instead of just looking at connections and volume of traffic, I can change the tolerance of my application round trip time so that I can start to see where there's latency across any of these tiers. In this case, it looks like we're actually in fairly good shape. So let me jump into one of these other views, and there we go. So now I can actually start to see where we're experiencing higher or lower latency from these particular tiers. The way that Boundary is actually capturing this latency, it's doing so passively. So we're not putting any additional load onto what it is we're monitoring. Instead, we're taking the approach of passively looking at all of the flows as they're occurring, and we're simply reporting on what's actually occurring. So again, there's no like ping, or there's no way that we're putting synthetic, running any kind of synthetic tests on these. We're just reporting exactly what you see.
Are you just tapping into log files, or what are you doing? How are you doing that?
No, absolutely not. So everything that you're seeing, it's based off of the flow data. So in this case, what you're looking at, it's actually showing me three-way handshake going from server A to server B, essentially. Right. So we're doing this at the connection level, and what that means, to put it into technical terms, we're looking at SYN, SYN-ACK, and ACK, and we're measuring the amount of time it takes for a connection to go from A to B, from B to A, and then A back to B.
Gotcha.
Yep.
It's a very powerful view right there. And you pull stuff out just to get better perspective on what's happening, right? When you're moving those nodes around, that's just a visual mechanism for getting deeper in terms of understanding what's happening, right?
Precisely, yeah. So, one of the beautiful things about this is, in this case, maybe this is the thing that I care about. However, maybe you care about a completely different set of servers or what have you. So if you want, you can go in and you can use these filters that I pulled out before, or you can go in and you can start to reference previously saved views. So maybe there's a unique application tier that you care about. So then you can come in and you can see, oh, okay, well, here's exactly what's happening in my world.
Gotcha.
Great. Now, one of the other key things about this is, as I was saying, we're looking at both latency going from tier to tier. And visually, we can obviously, we can spot that just based off of the colors that change from me changing my scale. The other thing that I can get the other thing that I can see visually is the volume of traffic moving from tier to tier. So if I select one of these links, I can actually get a sense of not only that we're pushing a lot of traffic from the messaging tier to the streaming tier, but I can see the actual applications that are generating this traffic. So in this case, I can see a port protocol breakdown of which applications are actually flowing from messaging tier to my streaming tier, or what's happening from my coordination tier over to my stream processing service, and so on. So this is something that especially true for people running in the cloud is, you can use other monitoring tools to get an understanding of when you're sending a lot or a little traffic. I mean, that kind of information has been around forever, and it's really easy to get to just using SNMP. However, the reality is that isn't terribly useful. Knowing that you're sending a lot or a little traffic only gets you so far. What people really are looking to understand is, okay, well, what types of traffic is it I'm sending? The easiest way to sort of, think about it or put it into relatable terms for most people is, high CPU or low CPU. No one necessarily cares about that. People care about the processes that are making up high CPU or low CPU, and it's the same exact thing with network traffic. So again, Boundary is automatically pulling out this information, and we're automatically processing it and putting it into these, into our UI. Now, I can use this view as sort of a jumping off point so I can go into that dashboard view that I talked about earlier. So I can start off here, and then if I see something that catches my eye, I can jump immediately into the dashboard so I can start to do some deeper inspection into what's happening. The thing that I talked about earlier in terms of the actual agents, we call them meters. So the software meters that are out there living on each of the servers that you plan to monitor, those software meters are streaming information back to us over duly authenticated TLS. So all the data is being encrypted as it's coming back to Boundary's SaaS platform. And then once it hits us, we're actually taking that stream, and it's basically being split into two. So one of those streams is going directly into the UI. So today, the amount of latency going from a customer's server to the time that it takes for it to get processed and published in the UI, it's usually less than 2 seconds. To be honest, it's probably less than 1 second. It is extremely fast, and it's able to be that fast using WebSockets. The other place where we're sending the information, where the other path of the stream is going, is into our backend data store. So with Boundary, we're maintaining the last 24 hours of 1 second data. From there, we roll it up to the last 60 days of 1 minute data. And then we maintain the last year of 1 hour data by default. So it is a tremendous amount of data that we have on hand. So any of our customers can go back in time and they can start to see, like, okay, well, I see where I'm at today, but I'm really curious to see where was I at, maybe in February. Show me exactly, what was happening. So then users can go in and they can start to compare, what was happening then versus what's happening today to get a good understanding of where they might be, where things may have deviated. The default view that I'm looking at, again, it's showing me what's happening at 1 second resolution. And the metrics that we're looking at here by default are bits. So we're looking at, the volume of traffic. However, the other metrics that we offer are packets, packet retransmits, out-of-order packets, and AppRTT. And, AppRTT is going to be representative of application round-trip time or really latency. Now, bits and packets can absolutely be actionable items. Again, if you're sending a lot of traffic, or if you're sending, maybe you're processing and sending too many packets, that can be something that's worth taking a look at. But with retransmits and out-of-order packets and application round-trip time, this is stuff that's absolutely actionable. So, for instance, for most people, if their internal environment is processing, if they're doing more than 1% for packet retransmits, then it could be indicative of some serious issues. Those issues could be at the switch. They could be, on the server side, maybe things are backed up, or maybe things are queuing. Or it could potentially be a misconfigured application. So you can use Boundary to get closer to being able to figure out exactly, where the disconnect is or where the problem is. Out-of-order packets, you can use this to figure out where you could be having a packet loss, or where you could be having, just again, some obvious drops or problems in your applications or within your networks. And then round-trip time, I can come in and you can see I can see this from here as well. Now, the dashboard, it gives me a steady stream of where, what things are happening now. But if I want, I can scroll down and I can use this table to get an understanding of where things have been at over time. In this case, the average that's represented here, it's based off of the 3-minute window that we're currently looking at. But if I want, again, I can roll back in time and I can see what was happening using these views. The other option that I have is, with this information, I can also set up alerts and notifications. I can also set up daily reports that are being sent out. I actually have one of these daily reports up right here, just so you can get a sense of what this looks like. So, really, we're taking the information that I'm showing you on the dashboard and we're rolling it up into this daily report, so it's much more easier to consume, I'd say. Coming back to the dashboard, these views are multidimensional, as you've seen. So I can either go in and I can pivot off of the different metrics that we have. I also have the ability of going in and starting to take a step back further and get an idea of where things are at with my countries or by networks and what have you. I also have the ability in Boundary to set up filters so that I can start to isolate traffic that might be of interest to me. So as an example, I come into here and at a glance I can see right now these are my current top talkers. If, for instance, I happen to see a top talker that's of interest to me, maybe I see some traffic that I don't expect, or maybe someone in here is a little noisier than I would expect to see, I can isolate this traffic by simply hovering over the item, clicking on filter, and you can see from here it's generated this filter that I can use. Once this filter is in place, I can take this, and as I pivot to other views, we can see it maintains this filter. So now it's showing me the top networks that are currently communicating to us, but only as they relate to the United Kingdom in this case. So again, here we're seeing traffic, both that's being received and traffic that's being sent, all from the UK. If I want, I can keep isolating this further, and I can keep getting, I can keep drilling down so I can get a better understanding of the types of traffic or the actual IPs that are generating this information. The other thing that I can do is, instead of drilling in from there, I can simply come over to here and I can start to stack these. And you can see I can add as many filters as I want in here so that I can start to better isolate and get a better understanding of what's happening with my data. All right, so I think just to come back to here, just to come back around to the applications and application monitoring, let me go over to here, and I'll access what's known as a conversation. Now, again, a conversation, it's essentially what I was just showing you, but what I was showing you were filters that I was building, ad hoc. I was just going in and drilling into those and building those on the fly. If I want, I can save those filters, which then persist in Boundary as what's known as a conversation. So, for instance, you can see we have a conversation here that's been set up with specific focus on what's happening with a couple of my application tiers. So I'll go in and I'll see what's been happening. We'll do with, we'll pull out my messaging tier. So I'll scroll down. And instead, we'll just go with what's been happening with my Kobayashi tier to my React tier. Or better yet, I'll go with Kobayashi to my React servers. Now, in this case, what I'm actually drilling into is my data store. So I can get a better understanding of what's happening from my 9-node cluster over to my 3-node React instance. I come into here and I can see the types of traffic that are actively being processed. And if I want, I can pivot, move over to my top nodes, and I can get an understanding of the actual servers that are responsible for generating this traffic. So who's actually participating in this traffic right now? This can be really powerful for me to come in and for me to be able to get a sense of where maybe we have some outliers. And you can see if I come into here, I can immediately identify that this traffic isn't as smooth as I would like. I can see this just based off of the profile that we see here. So for instance, if I mute this, you can see both server 3 and server 01, they look like they're overlapping, which is perfect. That's exactly how I want to see my traffic distributed. However, data 02, we obviously are having some types of issues with this because it's kind of all over the place. If I want, instead of looking at the bits, remember I can go in and I can get a sense of where we're having more or less retransmits. In this case, it's empty, which is perfect. You don't want to see retransmits for your internal traffic. So I'll move over to application round trip time, where we can see we've got a couple of peaks over here. But again, in this case, nothing for me to be too concerned about. Now, one of the last things to show is, I touched on it before, but the alerting and the notification piece within Boundary. So if I want, I can go in and I can set up a notification, and the notifications can be set up as email. I can kick off an email notification if traffic goes too high or if it deviates outside of certain bounds. I can also integrate with PagerDuty. So if I want, I can start to send my notifications to a third-party service. And then we also have webhooks. So any service that's out there, you can start to tie in our alerts and our notifications right to it. Now, the other type of notification that we support, something really really nice, really unique to this product is it's called an annotation. Now, these annotations, again, I can create this either as an alert. I can also create this from the GUI. They allow me to add some context with what I'm seeing on screen. So, for instance, I can say, we'll say chef change. Just say chef. And chef, very popular automation tool. It's actually what we use in-house to push out applications. Like I said, it's used for automation, orchestration, you'd say. We have out-of-the-box integration with Chef and with Puppet and with a number of other tools so that the moment that there's a change that's made with those tools, you can visualize that change on the Boundary dashboard. So, again, I'm just manually doing this, but this is something that could have been automatically fired from an external service. So, with Boundary, it's going to be a great way for you to see the effects of something that changed that was out there. So you can have those components like Chef or like Puppet, or you can use tools like Splunk or AppDynamics, for instance, so that the moment that there's an event that occurs in those systems, it can then post an annotation of Boundary so that you can see, oh, okay, well, in this case, it looks like this chef change didn't change anything, so we're in pretty good shape. Or, okay, over here it looks like a test notification went out, so maybe that's why we saw this quick spike that we see here on screen. So then I can use these really to enrich what I'm able to visualize within the Boundary dashboard. One of the key things to touch on with those annotations is, remember, you can do it as an alert. You can do it using the GUI. The other option here is if I go to my documentation, you can see we have an Annotations API. Now, Annotations API, huge if you want to start to integrate any of your other services and start to have them communicate back to Boundary. You can see to do this, it's really as simple as setting up a curl call. So our APIs are, they're all RESTful APIs, so they're very, very easy to work with and interact with. In general, anything that you can do within the Boundary UI, we have APIs tied to them back here. So if someone's looking to, take the Boundary information outside of Boundary or, integrate other tools with Boundary, they can absolutely do so. But yeah, I'd say that those are some of the key features within Boundary that I at least wanted to talk to you all about today.
Yeah,
any questions?
That's really, really interesting stuff. So obviously, complex environments you talked about, certainly manufacturing, shipping. I see a lot of play for e-commerce as well. I presume you get some e-commerce customers.
A lot. It's big data is obviously all the rage, right? And everybody has big data to a certain extent. It's a matter of being able to process and being able to work with that data. So e-commerce, absolutely. A lot of marketing firms too. So anybody that's using tools like NoSQL or people that are using Hadoop, things like that really just allow themselves to scale out massively. So again, in the past, people would have, maybe a couple of MySQL servers, maybe a simple web server, whatever, but those environments are really, in time, they're starting to look more and more like what you see here on screen. So very distributed, very complex, very dynamic environments.
So I have a question. Who do you normally sell to within an organization? Who's the guy that tends to be the buyer of this?
It's typically someone, it's usually going to happen within the operations team. Developers definitely see value in this product too. It's, one of the powerful things about it is it's instant gratification, right? So instead of having to wait 300 seconds or 30 seconds or 60 seconds for a poll or for a sample or whatever, if someone pushes a button, if there's a deployment that's made or some type of change that's going on, maybe a new production change, then they can immediately see what the impact of that change was. Because obviously anytime that you're making a change, you're potentially introducing some type of problems. You're opening yourselves up to something. So like I said, developers and operators are really those are the right audiences that immediately find something, something of value in here.
Right, I figured.
I mean, if it helps, Chris O'Connell here. Pretty much our customer base, we have 77 plus customers today paying, 750 using the free service. And out of that, 60% of them are running workloads in the cloud. And they're really customers where SaaS matters, where they're offering a SaaS service or gaming or social service, financial services, people that have a mobile apps or API providers. That's where we're seeing sort of, we call it the next gen apps, the modern apps.
Yeah, right, I can see that. When you say you've got, a lot of your customers are in the cloud, are they monitoring, do they also have data centers and they're monitoring the traffic between the data center and the cloud? Is that what's going on here?
We're seeing, absolutely, we're seeing it's the hybrid model, but also some of them are pure, all just using Amazon or Rackspace, etc.
All right. Yeah, I mean, kind of that was part of the question, really. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, we really are unique in that place because our meters are running on the instances, so they can bridge the gap for hybrid users.
So do you have some kind of arrangement with Amazon, or do the people just load you? I mean, how does that work?
We just on the arrangement side, we're partners. We're good buddies in that area. We help. In fact, we did an Amazon webinar just a couple of weeks ago. But typically, customers use provisioning tools like Dustin mentioned, and they just quickly provision as they provision their cloud instances. They just add us to it.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Well, I haven't got any more questions. You got any more questions, Eric?
I think that was just fascinating stuff. It's very similar to some other things we've seen over the last couple of years. I mean, it looks and feels a lot like what you'll get from a Cloudera, for example. Obviously, they have a very specific focus. But do you see a lot of business in that space? You mentioned big data, but in terms of setting up Hadoop clusters and processing big data and analyzing data, you mentioned Splunk, for example. They're obviously one of the big guys in log analytics. But are you seeing significant use cases around that purely analytical style environment as opposed to operations?
Oh yeah. So with I just pulled up the screen right here, and you can see so out of the box, one of the killer things about this product is it can monitor anything, and I mean that by literally it can monitor anything. So one of the things that comes up quite often though is Hadoop. Hadoop, unlike a lot of other services that are out there, instead of it just having one or two services, it has about 56 specific services that could be monitored. So to take the effort off of our customers, we ship with this Hadoop app pack. It was written specifically for Cloudera's distribution, but like I said, absolutely, people running Cloudera, they find value in this very fast.
I can imagine. Hey, well, this has been great stuff, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Folks, we've been talking here to Dustin Lawler and also Chris O'Connell from Boundary, a very interesting tool, certainly right in that center of the operational intelligence space. So thank you so much. And for more information, where do they go? Boundary.com, or what's your site?
That's it.
Yeah,
so simple as that.
You can go to Boundary.com. I should also point out that there is a free version out there too. So if you go to Boundary.com/sign-up, you can get going nice and quick.
How about that? All right. We like nice and easy. Okay, folks, thanks again for your time. This has been another vendor take of the operational intelligence space for InsideAnalysis.com. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.